Hey everyone, it's Richard Metal Fan here, bringing you guys an old school album review, my first old school album review for 2019. I should have covered this a few days ago, but I didn't have the time to do it, but I decided to cover it since it came out this 35th anniversary of this album that came out. So, yeah, as you can see by the title, today we're going to be looking into 1984 by Van Halen. Yep. This is the band's sixth album, I believe, which was released on January 9th, 1984, through Warner Brothers Music Records. Now, of course, Van Halen doesn't really need an introduction. I've covered Van Halen about a year ago where I reviewed their self-titled debut album, which for the 40th anniversary last year. Of course, which I honestly thought that was their best album today. And of course, like this is I feel like this marks sort of like at the end of an era, right? Sort of like their initial little classic era with the original lineup, all that stuff. And of course, like I said, and this album I feel like compared to like their debut album and other albums, it has like sort of like different elements that they incorporated, like with mainly like the use of like the synths that they have, which is kind of like unheard of compared to like if you listen to Van Halen 1 and then this, you could kind of tell it's sort of like a different style musically. The production is pretty great. The vocal work from David Lee Roth is good. I mean, he just sounds just as good as he did on the first album. And guitar wise, I mean, Eddie Van Halen just is a master at guitar, especially he invents the tapping, and just like and just like crazy like licks and stuff. The bass playing is pretty audible from Michael Anthony, and this is like one of his best bass playing. You could definitely hear the basses pretty well in the mix. And drumming wise, Alex Van Halen does a really great job on the drums. Like pretty much, I think this is his best album drumming wise that he has done. And then we'll try to get into that when we get into that. But without further ado, let's dive into this album track by track. Now the album opens up with the title track, which is sort of like a little short intro, which is basically just synthesizer oriented, and it indicates one of the major qualities that this album possesses, and that it's a heavy focus on the synthesizers. While it isn't a bad thing, it seems like overused sometimes, especially on a track like this is where pretty much the entire thing is a synthesizer. And the good thing is it's only like a minute long, and the synth sounds good, and it leads very well into the next track, which would be Jump, which is the first legitimate song on the album. And this is like Van Halen's first and last #1 single, and this was pretty much like played everywhere in like 1984. And this song is very centered around like the synthesizers, and it only features guitar sporadically throughout the song, aside from the solo, which is like a more adequate. And it comes equipped with a very catchy chorus and even a catchier pre-chorus and solid verses. And despite this, it's extremely poppy, making it not surprising at all why it's sort of like the big as it was back in the day. And this is arguably one of Van Halen's best well-known songs. It gives us sort of like a false sense of what the band is all about through its poppiness, but it's a good song. Next song on the album is Panama, which is my personal favorite song on the album, and this was another big hit from this album. But this may even be pretty much one of my favorite Van Halen songs of all time. It's short and it has the catchiness of Jump, but it's a much rockier here with the heavy guitar riff, pretty kind of different from Jump. But it has like louder verses and sort of like a very anthemic chorus. And the best of all, it has absolutely no synth after the two songs. It's just filled with just a spoken interlude and some face-melting guitar solo, which, like the rest of the song, is about a car. It's just yet another Van Halen song that most people have heard at one time and another. Great song. Top Jimmy, which, in my opinion, is probably the weakest track on the album. It has no keyboard in it, but it feels very light and poppy, even more so than Jump. It doesn't feel like Van Halen. It starts with a quiet guitar riff that isn't impressive or interesting, so much the verses and chorus, and even the guitar solo is nothing to write home about. The song wasn't a single, probably for a good reason. Next song on here is Drop Dead Legs, which features one of the best riffs on the album. It also has one of the heaviest on here. The chorus isn't that strong, but the lyrics being almost secondary, but the verses are pretty rock solid. And the first guitar solo isn't really that amazing, but the ending solo on the track is very phenomenal. While it was long and it kind of drags for the most part, it's a great addition to the song and provides a strong finish. Hot for Teacher. In my opinion, this is probably the close second for best song on the album behind Panama. It starts with like a 30-minute just rolling drum intro from Alex, and which is just almost kind of feels like you're hearing like a motorcycle starting like a blum 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 blum, and then Eddie comes in with sort of like the two-hand tapping solo thing. And this song is mainly about the guitar and sort of like their instrumentals, and the vocals are pretty much almost secondary. Nevertheless, Diamond Dave provides some of the most interesting lyrics yet, which is pretty much being about what you think it's about. And the guitar solo after the second chorus is fantastic. Definitely one of the best in the entire album, combining the quality of the song with the unique music video, and is poised to be a hit. I'll wait. Now, honestly, if you dislike the synths in the Van Halen songs, you may have a trouble getting into this song. It is literally entirely keyboard with the exception of the guitar solo, which, by the way, is very emotional and well done. And it features like a 45-second synth intro, and it slowly builds into the main tempo of the song. In a way, it's kind of ballady-ish, but it's a very heavier one. Even with the keyboard and the slowish tempo, it still rocks and has a killer chorus. Another plus is that these are some of the most David Lee Roth's most audible lyrics ever. Girls Gone Bad. While some may disagree with the following statement, this song is pretty much the same thing as Drop Dead Legs. It focuses mainly on the guitar with one of the most frantic solos on the album, but it actually has a pretty good chorus. It's basically a standard Van Halen sex-driven song, like pretty much most of Van Halen songs on here. And there really isn't anything special about it, but it sure does rock, so which is pretty much, it's another great song. And then the album concludes with House of Pain, which is an epic conclusion of this album. The song isn't long, clocking in just over 3 minutes, but half of it is just a raging guitar solo, which shows that Eddie at his best. And this is by far the heaviest song on the album, bordering on metal, and is actually an old song from like their club days. After 2 verses and choruses, the solo ushers in. Well, it is a minute long. It doesn't get old, and it's able to hold the listener's attention throughout the entire thing, and I find it's kind of similar to Double Talk and Jive by Guns N' Roses, with the flawless solo continuing on. Now, overall, 1984 is a great album. I honestly think this was Van Halen at their peak, and honestly, after this, they would kind of go downhill, because a lot of people don't know is like the David Lee Roth stuff from Van Halen is like the stuff I enjoy the most. I don't really like the stuff they would do after this album with Sammy Hagar, but of course David Lee Roth is back, and in 2012 they put out a different kind of truth, which I thought was good. But yeah, so if I were to give 1984 a score, I would give it probably a solid 9 out of 10. So yeah, that's my review of 1984 by Van Halen, guys. Thank you guys for watching. See you all in the next video, and keep it metal.